This is going to be awesome. This is a special bonus section, and we get just those in this room for this session, and it's going to be really, really mind-expanding. You know, we were backstage, and I was sitting there, I was thinking about the first time I attended a Bob Proctor seminar. It actually blows me away that that was 13 years ago. It seems like yesterday. August 18, 2006 was my first seminar, live seminar. And in fact, it was the first time I had ever heard Bob teach. And it was such a, I mean, it had an emotional impact on me. I was sitting right about where you are at that table back there, right almost exactly where you were. And I didn't even know it was a Bob Proctor seminar until I arrived. I was told it was a leadership seminar. And I'm in there getting ready for it to all happen. And Bob walks out. And he starts saying these things that I swear within moments it felt like he chopped my head off, took it off, shook it all around and put it back on, and I was supposed to figure out what was up, what was down, what was right, what was wrong, what was possible, what wasn't possible. And I started in my imagination just going through the boardrooms and executive offices that I'd been in, at that point 18 years as a corporate attorney, doing bank mergers and acquisitions and, you know, forming banks and IPOs and that kind of thing, very far removed from teaching this material. And Bob got my imagination turned on to such a high degree. And I just started thinking about, what do I want, what I really want? This session that we're doing this afternoon is the art of goal creation. And the title has great meaning to it. I mean, how many of you think of goals as an art? You know, really think of goals as an art. Or goal creation as opposed to goal achieving. First off, how many of you are in a live Bob Proctor event for the very first time? Wow. Awesome. Oh, that is so awesome, because it just totally changed my life. Well, we're going to talk about the art of goal creation. It literally makes life magical. I'm often asked, what's the biggest thing you learned that changed everything for you when you went to your first Bob Proctor seminar? And it was to latch on to a big goal. To a goal that was beyond where I thought I could go. You know, I mean, when I was in that seminar, I honestly I thought life was pretty good. I was at the top of my field as a banking lawyer, had a beautiful home, family, horses, dogs, life is good. And Bob, he kept asking these penetrating questions. And he started quoting some people. And he quoted Earl Nightingale. He said, most people tiptoe through life hoping to make it safely to death. I thought, well, that's kind of interesting, you know. And then he said, for most people, when their heart stops beating, it'll be a mere formality. And I kind of chuckled at that. I thought that was a little bit funny. And then he quoted Bill Gove, who's like the Frank Sinatra of public speaking, who taught Bob how to speak, even though they don't speak anything alike. But Bill Gove was on stage, and he was saying, if I want to be free, I got to be me. Not the me I think you think I should be. Not the me I think my spouse thinks I should be. Not the me I think my kids think I should be. If I want to be free, I got to be me, and I better know who me is. And something about that, it was like a bucket of ice just got thrown on my head. And I just really woke up. And then Bob, he kept saying, what do you want? What do you really, really want? It doesn't matter what somebody else wants for you. It doesn't even matter if you think you can do it. Hi, Phil. It doesn't matter how old you are, how young you are, how much education you have or don't have. The only prerequisite is, do you want it? And I latched on to something huge in that seminar, and it changed my life. And that's what I want for you today, is to latch onto something really huge that you love. And when you do that, it propels you to a whole other world. And it introduces you to a part of yourself you didn't even know was there. It truly is magical.
You know, as Sandy's talking here, what was running through my mind is where she's gone since she was in that first seminar. And if you make even 25% of the progress that she's made, you're in for a real good ride, I'm telling you. her life has changed so dramatically in so many different ways. And yet, when she was here for her first seminar, she would be considered by almost anyone as being very successful. So this isn't really about where you're at from a dollar and cent point of view, or where you're at in your business. It's where you're at relative to where you can go. If you take a look here, we point out that goal achieving is an art. And you wonder, why is goal achieving an art? What you're actually doing, what we're doing when we're going after and achieving goals, we're manipulating energy. All science and all theology have been very clear about one thing. Nothing is created or destroyed. Now think of that. Nothing is either created or destroyed. So what we're really doing is manipulating energy. We're taking energy and we're moving it into another energy, and it probably never would have gone there if it hadn't been for us. Goal creation, I believe, is what we're here for. I think that's why we're here. We're God's highest form of creation. There's nothing on the planet that will equal you or me. Most people, unfortunately, they're stalled somewhere in life, and they stay that way. And there's no need of it. Now, I was fortunate. Someone woke me up when I was 26. And I thought I was fairly old in starting. As I look back, I realized how young I was. Because there's no one that can even guess at what you and I are capable of doing. Now, as we go through today, and tomorrow, and the next day, 2 or 3 days, let me explain it this way. I was speaking to a group in Las Vegas a couple of days ago. There was about, I don't know, around 5,000 to 6,000 of them. And I pointed out that I'm not a motivation speaker. That's what people buy sometimes, but that's not what I am. I see myself more as a teacher than a speaker. And what we're going to teach you is absolutely incredible information. It's not taught in school. It's not taught in very many homes. And it is the reason so many people in life are stuck. Now think about this for a moment. We have people go right through our educational system, and they come out and they've got multiple degrees in many cases, and yet they're stuck. A clear 95% of the population just aren't making it happen. And they know they're capable of doing better, but they're not sure why or how. They've got degrees coming right off the end of a business card. And yet they're in debt. They can't even pay their school loan. School loans, I understand, are higher than credit card debt. I mean, it's just absolutely ridiculous amount of money that's owed. And so people are coming out of universities and they've got all kinds of knowledge, but they really don't know who they are. They don't know how to sit down and chart a straight course to wherever they want to go. When I was first given this book, the man said to me, if you'll do exactly what I tell you, you can give anything you want. Now, I didn't believe that. I had 2 months high school. I had a terrible work record. I had a bad attitude. And everything was going in the wrong direction. I didn't read anything. He asked me if I read anything. I said, no, I can't read. No, I could. Not well, but I could. And I've since found out that most people read at about a grade 7 level, and that's because we learn to read by the time we're in grade 7, and we don't improve upon the skill from that point on. But he said, if you do exactly what I tell you. Now, there was a bunch of other information that we shared, but that was the essence of it. He said, do exactly what I tell you. I had never done what I was told. I was the kind of kid that was going in the wrong direction all the time. I spent a number of years in the Canadian Navy, and I'm telling you, I paid all kinds of fines and I put up with all kinds of punishment because I wouldn't do what I was told. Here he's saying, if you do what I tell you. And that's when he said then, your way's not working, why don't you try mine? And I don't know why, but I said, okay. Now, it was only in retrospect I realized I did that. And everything in my life started to change. And it changed so rapidly, I really couldn't keep up with it. I didn't know what was happening. I went in a matter of a year from earning $4,000 a year to $14,500 a month. I mean, it was just boom, boom, boom. In less than 5 years, I was over $1 million a year. And I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. Now, this may sound strange. Sandy had graduated from university as the top banking lawyer in all universities in the United States. She was from one side of the tracks, I was from the other side of the tracks. As she was mentioned, she was a lawyer that was merging banks, buying banks, selling banks, turning them public. I mean, she was so far removed from me. But as we talked later on, she had no idea why she was doing so well. She didn't know why. So she was what you call an unconscious competent. Here we are from opposite side of the tracks, but we hit a point where we're doing just about the same things. We were accomplishing the same things. Neither one of us knew why. Now, I was living in England. I had opened an office in England. I was living there, and I was earning all kinds of money, and I knew where the money was. I really didn't care what I did with it. I was totally irresponsible. And I would go down to the Playboy Club. It was on Park Lane down by the London Hilton, and I'd play roulette. And I didn't care if I lost because I knew where to go and get more money. But one day I thought, this doesn't make sense. This is not being responsible. I don't know, something moved me. And so I started to wonder, why am I winning? Because the change was so dramatic in my life. And I didn't know why. And I couldn't find anybody who could tell me. Now, I had obviously been doing something very right, but I didn't know what it was. If you had asked Sandy, because I was asking her questions, and she couldn't tell me why she was so successful at what she was doing. And so I made up my mind I was going to figure it out. I was going to find out. And I couldn't find anybody that could tell me why I went from losing to winning. And I mean really losing, really winning. No one could tell me. And so I started to study. It took me 9.5 years. Now, when I got the dots to connect, all I wanted to do was teach it to other people. When I figured out why I changed, I knew that if I could change the way I did, anyone could. I had to figure out, though, what I did. And I did figure it out. It took me 9.5 years. And that's when I figured out, I'm going to teach this. Because I wanted everybody to have what I had. And I have seen some phenomenal changes take place. Now, I started to spend time teaching this to Sandy, and I watched her put it together, and bang, 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 marvelous things started to happen. In fact, she changed our company so much, it was like night and day. And we'll tell you some other stories about people that we've worked with, corporations. I've worked with the largest insurance companies in the world. We saw Prudential sales, one VP told me it went up over $1 billion. We changed the whole company. We went Metropolitan Life, and then Great Eastern over in Asia. Everywhere we went, results were just springing up all over the place. And that is really because we were helping people understand who they are. See, there's all kinds of goals programmed. Now, this is a bit of a phenomenon. We learned a lesson here. We advertised we were going to sell a gold seminar for 3 or 4 days. We were having trouble selling it. Mikey said, let's take it back to the paradigm shift. Boom. It went like a rocket. We sell it out. Now, that's because people think they know how to set goals, and the truth is they really don't. They really don't. They do not know how to properly set and achieve goals. And the ones that do, they can't articulate on what they're doing. I was talking to Keith yesterday, and his business has changed like night and day. And yet what we taught you is pretty simple. Would you agree with that? There's nothing complicated about it. But like that, he started to earn millions of dollars that he wasn't earning before. We've seen that happen time and time again. It happened with Sandy, and then it started to happen with me again when I figured out what I had done. So what we're going to be doing here today, and then for the rest of the week, is we're going to teach you some of the things we found out about how and why this worked. Now, you've got an exercise book here, and we point out, if you just look on page 3, we say the concept and laws incorporated into this goal creation lesson are universal. They'll work for every person. See, it doesn't matter what you're doing, it'll work. I've gone into prisons with it, it's worked there. I've gone into schools, gone into corporations. Doesn't really matter where it is. Now, this section is designed to help you bridge the gap between where you are and get your imagination going where you want to be. If you look on the very first page, we point out here, goals are where you're able to express your unique gift of creation. But that's only if you're setting the goals properly and you're doing it the way it should be done. Now, Sandy, I want you to share with the group, what was the biggest thing you learned when you started to get into this to really make things happen?
Well, the biggest thing I learned was how to set the goal and why it's important to set the goal as something beyond what you think you're capable of doing. I mean, to me, that sounded so incredibly illogical. And, you know, in fact, one of my mantras when I first started really getting into this was do the illogical, which as an attorney was a crazy thing. But I mean, sometimes I would say that over and over and over, do the illogical, because your paradigm is keeping you in a box you don't even know you're there. And it's so important to set the right goal, because if you don't set the right goal, you stay in that box. You might, you know, bounce off the walls, bounce off the ceiling, but you're staying in there. When you set a goal that's way beyond where you are, it inspires you and propels you to move past the obstacles that you're going to encounter, to move past the criticism of people around you that you're going to encounter. It's going to cause you to go through the difficult changes you have to make to change your paradigm. So when I'm in that seminar and Bob kept saying, what do you want? What do you really want? And the way he was asking it, and his eyes, he's just, what do you want? You know, here we got Phil Goldfine in the front row here. And Phil, you're just such a great example. He's got shoe boxes of goal cards. And he's taken probably more notes than anyone in this room. How long have you been studying with Bob? 20 years. And he's probably taken more notes than anyone in this room, because he's cracked that code. He's cracked and understands the idea that the more you get of this, the more there is to get. I mean, it's like peeling an onion. You just keep getting aha. And it's the goal that you latch on to that's going to determine how much you raise your awareness at any given point in time. So Bob is really just opening something up in me, and I'm thinking, what do I want? What do I really want? And it was actually a Science of Getting Rich seminar. And we had a little green book, Wallace Wattles' The Science of Getting Rich. And I had it open, and he's like, what do you want? And he had us write down whatever came to our mind. And I wrote in teeny, teeny, tiny print, and I don't write small, but it was the smallest I could write so nobody would see it. And I said, I want to be Bob Proctor's closest advisor. I want to be in the inner circle of this company, and I really want to create a program with him to bring into these boardrooms and executive offices. Because all of a sudden I could see that even though I could literally do a bank merger in my sleep almost, I didn't understand the human element, the human dynamic. I didn't understand what was going on inside of each of these individuals that was stopping them in many cases from achieving what they wanted. So I thought, if I could create a program with Bob Proctor with this information and bring it into the boardrooms and executive offices in a way that they were open to it. Because I remember when I told one of my law colleagues, the head of the corporate finance department, that the new career I was going into, and he looked at me in all seriousness and said, that sounds scary. Like, personal development, scary. And I wanted these executives to welcome it, to realize the benefit they were going to get from it. And so I wrote this down, teeny tiny print, and then before anyone could see it, I slammed it shut. And then all this chatter started happening inside of me. Who do you think you are? Bob Proctor doesn't even know who you are. You're just a lawyer. What do you know about personal development? And I wanted it to be a corporate development, the most transformational corporate development program of its kind. And I'm inside my head, what do you know about developing programs? What do you know about this? And chat. And then, what's your dad gonna think? What's dad gonna think? Because I was practicing law with him. And at this point, he'd become a client. And this was just, oh my gosh, it was so loud, it was overpowering. And I didn't want anyone around me to see it because the paradigm was in full charge. I didn't want to look ridiculous to everybody. But I fell in love with the idea. And when I wasn't beating myself up in my mind telling me why I couldn't do it, I was imagining what would happen if I did do it. And I was imagining the changes in the boardroom and how that would overflow into their family life. And that would overflow into the community. And I started thinking about the impact around the world. And my imagination was just going off to these beautiful places, but the paradigm kept bringing me back. But I was so in love with that idea by the end of 2.5 days in this seminar that I made a decision I was going to do it. No matter what it took, so long as it was moral and ethical, I was going to do it. And I had no idea how. And it's through that journey, it took until April 1st, 2009, when we presented the program to the public for the first time. So from August 2006 to April 2009. And there were so many moments in that journey when I didn't think it was happening. I didn't see any physical evidence that this was happening, that these changes I wanted were taking place. And I had strong opposition. And I had to change my thinking continually. And I had to stretch. And I had to overcome obstacles that were huge. And we'll get into that. But the point is that I latched onto this and fell in love with this idea. And so while I was here at my level of awareness, by the time I achieved these goals that I set out at that seminar, I was way up here on another level. And it's the goal and falling in love with the goal and feeding that idea and changing the vibration that you're in, changing what you're in harmony with. That is the real magic. And that's the biggest thing I learned at that seminar.
What Sandy really did was create an awareness. If you look on the third page here, we say individuals involved in goal creation are interesting people, and they really are. They're productive people. They frequently accomplish more with their life in 1 year than most individuals do in an entire lifetime. Now, do you know, on the surface, as you look at that, that may sound like a gross exaggeration, but it's really not. You're going to find individuals, they will accomplish more in 1 year than some people do in an entire lifetime. That's not an exaggeration. Now let's take a look at the next paragraph. We say an effective goal will inspire you and you'll also expand your level of awareness. Awareness is really the key. That's really what we're going after. When a baby is born, a baby is not aware of the difference between a male and a female. A baby will be looking for a nipple, but they'll suck on anything you put near their mouth. You could put your thumb there and they'll start sucking on it. They're not aware of the difference of male and female. It takes a while and then they develop the awareness. Shortly after, we start sending them to school and the awareness takes a back seat and we start to develop intellect. And the intellect becomes the most important thing. And it stays that way almost all through life. We're really into helping them develop the intellect. We say they're really smart. You know a lot of people who have a highly evolved intellect that are really smart, but they're also broke. They're not very happy. They don't do what they want with their life. They're not going where they want to go. I always point out a person is not earning $100,000 a year because they want $100,000 a year. They're earning $100,000 a year because they're not aware of how to earn $100,000 a month. See, awareness is really the key. People are not alone and lonely because they enjoy being alone and lonely. They're alone and lonely because they're not aware of how to develop meaningful relationships. People are not struggling all the way from the cradle to the casket because they enjoy struggling. They're struggling because they're not aware of how to sit down and chart a course for themselves and then stick to it. And that's really where it's at. We say the higher awareness will automatically shift your perception of who you truly are and what you're capable of doing. That's really what we're after. If somebody had asked you who you are, what would you tell them? See, most people are really at a loss. And as I started to study this, I started to become fascinated with it. I first got this book. He gave me the book, Think and Grow Rich. And I started to study it. And I've been reading this every day now for going on 60 years, 58 years. And then I found Earl Nightingale had condensed narrated that onto a record. And so I started to listen to the record. That led me into other records. He had made a series of programs, the Lead the Field program, Great Ideas in Selling. Well, I started to listen to this. I never heard people talk like this, ever, anywhere. I had never heard people talk like he was talking. And in looking back, I became addicted to listening to those records. And it was the addiction to the records that literally changed my life, because it changed the paradigm. And I started to understand what a paradigm was. And over the weekend here, you're going to get a very good look at what a paradigm is. See, you and I are all programmed. We're programmed to live the way we live. You get up in the morning, and there's an automatic program. You just move into action on that program. Now, if you're living with somebody, you don't mess with their program. When they first get up in the morning, they're very quiet usually, and they move around, and they've got a pattern that they follow, and you don't screw around with that pattern. Well, most people do that all the way from right through their life. We will find, as a little kid, you probably heard this, my mother, I'd do things that I wasn't supposed to be doing, and she'd say, "Why'd you do that?" And I'd say, "I don't know." She'd say, "What do you mean you don't know? You know better." "I know. Why'd you do it?" "I don't know." Then I went into the Navy. Every commanding officer, "Proctor, why'd you do that?" "I don't know, sir." "What do you mean you don't know? You know better." "I know. Why'd you do it?" "I don't know." Then I got married. My wife says, "Why are you doing that?" And I just said, "Drop it right there." You see, we're doing things we don't want to do, but we do them anyway. It's giving us results you don't want, but we're doing them anyway. Why do we do these things? We do them because we're programmed to do them. This is designed to help a person change that programming. Here on the bottom of page 3, we point out the beautiful truth is there is no end to the benefits that will be derived from an effective goals program. The operative word here is effective. An effective goals program begins by laying a solid foundation where all of the basic fundamentals of the human personality are covered. It clearly explains the creative process of life, which is governed by exact laws. See, this whole universe operates in an orderly way. You know it's going to get dark tonight, and it will get dark tonight. You know that it'll get bright in the morning. We know when the tide goes out, it doesn't just keep going out, it comes back in. We know that winter never follows winter. We know these things. We grow up knowing them. We just don't spend any time thinking about them. Outside of my studio, I have a beautiful studio that I work in. Right outside the studio is a Japanese maple tree, a big one. And in the spring, that tree starts to bud leaves, and the leaves are very dark. They're a dark green, brown color. And then they change as the year goes along. Right now, those leaves are becoming crimson red. And then they'll fall off the tree. Now, there's a pattern to this tree, and I love watching it. I like watching the change take place. I know what's coming next. I know it because I've been living with that tree now for about 40 years. And so I can predict just about when the color is going to go from one to another, and when they're going to fall off the tree. You know this. You know how to do this. If you have a farm, you'll know when to plant certain seed or when to plant certain crops. And you'll know approximately how long it takes. What we should do is ask ourselves, why do we know these things? We didn't always know them. Why do we know them? What's the benefit from knowing this? Well, there's all kinds of benefits, but we don't relate to it ourselves. We don't say, well, wait a minute, I'm something like the leaves on that tree. Or I'm something like that tide. Or I'm something like the field, the crops that we sow. They all operate by law, and so do I. Everything in this universe operates by law. So as we start to understand this, and then we start thinking, gosh, if I could do that. Now, I got a call 20 years ago. I didn't know how long ago it was, but Phil just said it was 20 years ago. And a guy named Ed Morrissey phoned me. And he said, Bob, I'm talking to a guy that's reading your book, and he doesn't believe I know you. I started laughing. I said, oh, yeah. And Phil Goldfine was reading the Born Rich book. And he got talking to Ed about it, and he was telling him, you should read this book, you should read this book. So finally, Ed said, well, I know Bob. And he said, you don't know him? He said, phone him. So he phoned me. Now, Phil said, where are you? And I said, I got on the phone with him. I said, I'm in Vegas. He said, can I come and talk to you? And I said, yeah, if you want. So he jumped on the plane, and he came over, and we started to talk. And one of the first things I asked him is a question I usually ask a person, what's the most you've ever earned in a year? And I don't really care what the answer is, but I learned a long time ago that money is something you can measure right to the penny. It's about the only thing that you can measure as accurately as that. You can't measure health like that. You'd say, well, health's more important than money. Maybe, but you can't measure it like you can money. You can go to a doctor, and the doctor will tell you you're in perfect health, walk out and drop dead. And people do that. So you see, they couldn't really measure it that accurately. Money you can measure very accurately. So I'll ask a person, what's the most you've earned in a year? And he said $250,000. Now, he later told me he lied, and he was earning around $200,000. I asked him what he did, and he said, I'm a movie producer. And I said, what do you really want? Now, this is over a period of time and involved in conversation. He said, I want to earn a lot of money. And I said, well, I can show you how to do that. I said, how much do you want? He said, I want to earn millions. And I said, I can show you how to do that. Is that all you want? No, he said, I want to win an Oscar. I said, I can show you how to do that. He said, I want to win an Emmy. I said, I'll show you how to do that. See, it almost sounded like I had some magic wand, because it didn't matter what he said. I said, I can show you how to do it. See, the truth is, everything you want, you get the same way. The same way the crops grow or the leaves on that tree change. You get it by following the laws. The laws are God's modus operandi. It's how everything in this universe happens. Now, you're going to find that not everybody understands the laws. Most people don't understand them at all. Now, you'll say, well, people with Roman collars understand it. No, they don't. Some do, but not many. You'll say, well, psychiatrists, psychologists understand them. No, they don't. Some do, but not many. See, the truth is, very, very few people understand what we're talking about here. Now, it's not so complicated that we're going to use words that nobody understands. The words are very simple. You can have a very limited vocabulary and start to understand this. When I first started to study this, I had a very limited vocabulary. But I could understand what these records were telling me, and I would just do what it said, and I'd win. Well, over the weekend, we're going to cover what Phil did. Because here he went from struggling. I was in his studio the other day. We flew in from Vegas, and we went down to his studio. How many movies you got going right now?
Shooting? 4.
You had more on that list.
Well, we have 9 in post-production, and we have 4 that we're about to do.
So there's 13 films. Yeah, because he went over a list. 13 films that he's working on right now. I asked him one time, I said, how many films does a person make in a year? Well, he says, some don't make any in a year. He says, usually maybe 2 or 3 every 2 or 3 years. And yet, he's got 4 he's filming right now and 9 in post-production. That's extremely unusual.
And 2 that are about to be released that you can buy next month.
All right. And 2 others that are going to be released we can buy next month. Now, you know, over the 20 years, he is, without question, one of the best students I've ever seen. He and Sandy be about on a par for learning. And he earns millions of dollars. He's probably the busiest producer in all of Los Angeles. If he's making 10, 15 movies in a year, and somebody else is making 1 or 2 every 3 years. He's won the Oscar, he's won the Emmy, he's won a Tony. I think there's been 3,072 Oscars awarded since 1930 when they first come out. 3,072. Only 26 people had won an Oscar, an Emmy, and a Tony. You got the Oscar for the movies, the Emmy for television, and the Tonys for Broadway. Phil phoned me a little while ago, a few months back, and he said, "Do you want to come to opening night in New York with me? We're opening Tootsie," and he got his Tony. So he's got the Oscar, the Emmy, the Tony. He's got other awards that I'm not going to go into right now. Earns millions of dollars, and he follows this to the letter. You see, what we're talking about here, anybody can use for anything. Sandy's used it. She was looking at a house, and the house was quite a ways out of what she thought her reach was. And I said, "Well, do you want the house?" And, "Well, yeah." She said, "I want it." I said, "Okay, then that's the only prerequisite." See, the only prerequisite to get what you want is, do you want it? You don't have to know how you're going to get it. You don't have to know where the money is. Now, this sounds so absolutely ridiculous to the average individual that it's rejected. But the truth is, the Wright brothers didn't know how to get the plane off the ground until after they got it off the ground. I had the good fortune of working with Ed Hillary on 2 or 3 occasions. He didn't know how to get to top Mount Everest until after he got there. Nobody had ever been there. Nobody had ever taken a plane in the air. They were the first to do these things. But they did them the same way. You see, the only prerequisite is, do you want to?
I hope you enjoyed this video. We put a lot of good information up here, and it causes everything in your life to get better. If you'd like us to notify you every time we put a new video up, hit subscribe and then turn on notification. Check out all our videos, and we will notify you when we put a new one up.